Joining me now is my Forbes colleague, reporter Kyle Mullins. Kyle, thanks for joining me.
Always great to be here, Brittany.
As you are well aware, your team is estimating the net worths of all the Supreme Court justices. Today, we are going to talk about one of the newer justices, Brett Kavanaugh. But before we get into his net worth, take us back to the beginning a little bit. Was he always well off?
So Brett Kavanaugh, son of two lawyers in the D.C. area. He's lived a somewhat privileged life his whole life. His mother was a trailblazing, female lawyer in the Maryland area. Eventually became a circuit court judge in Maryland. He talks about her a lot as his inspiration for going into law. He talks less about his dad, who was the head of a cosmetics industry association, basically a lobbying firm based 3 blocks from the White House. His dad was making millions of dollars, according to public documents. So, yes, he grew up quite comfortably. He went to an elite private school, Georgetown Preparatory School. Other prominent alumni include his fellow Supreme Court Justice Neil Gorsuch, Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, and lots of different congresspeople, ambassadors, all these types of folks. So, yes, he had a comfortable start.
He is the son of 2 lawyers. He himself obviously went to practice law. So tell us about his career, because he worked mainly in the public sector, also dabbled in the private sector. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. So Kavanaugh started, as a lot of elite law school graduates do, with clerkships. He did 3 clerkships, all with Republican-appointed conservative justices or conservative judges in the D.C. legal scene. Then he went to work for Ken Starr, who you might recall as the independent, who eventually became the independent prosecutor who was investigating Bill Clinton, started out investigating a land deal that Bill Clinton had done, eventually moved on to the Monica Lewinsky scandal. Kavanaugh was there the whole ride. After that, he did dabble in private practice a little bit in the late 90s, kept going back and forth between private practice and, helping out Starr's investigation. And then he was involved in the litigation surrounding the 2000 Bush v. Gore recount situation in Florida, as all, I think, prominent conservative lawyers were at that point on the Bush side, and prominent liberal lawyers were on the Gore side. And then he joined the Bush administration shortly afterwards. When Bush ended up winning that case, he rewarded Kavanaugh, it seems, with a position in the White House. So he worked as a public sector lawyer basically his entire life.
He argued in front of the Supreme Court in the 90s. Then he was nominated to the Supreme Court in 2018 when then President Trump nominated him. And as we all remember, this was just 6 years ago now, almost. And there was a lot of turmoil around this nomination process. Can you walk us through that?
Absolutely, yeah. So he got his appointment as a judge in 2005, 2006, when after, I think on his 3rd try, George W. Bush finally managed to get his nomination through, became a judge. Was on the D.C. Circuit Court for, a little over a decade, and then President Trump nominated him to be on the Supreme Court. What happened then, it looked like it was going to be a pretty smooth process, just like his colleague on the Supreme Court, Neil Gorsuch, who had been nominated, the year before. But it all kind of went awry because a California professor went public with allegations that Kavanaugh had raped her in high school. And this started a political firestorm that I think compares to little else in recent history, especially when it comes to the Supreme Court. There was another round of hearings. There was a lot of back and forth over whether his nomination would actually be able to go through. Christine Blasey Ford, the psychology professor, did end up testifying. There were other accusers, some of which later walked their claims back, some of which have maintained their claims. Christine Blasey Ford testified. Kavanaugh testified again, had another round of hearings. He angrily accused the folks on the committee the Democrats on the committee of orchestrating a political hit job against his nomination. In the end, he was confirmed at 50-48 by the Senate, which is the narrowest Supreme Court nomination in recent history.
That was tight. That was one of, obviously, a political touchstone in the 21st century. I do not want to turn to his finances, though. Reveal them. How much is he worth?
We estimate that Brett Kavanaugh is worth about $2 million.
And that's not that much compared to the other justices. So break it down for us. What makes up this his fortune?
Absolutely. Most of it is his home. He's got a nice home in the Maryland suburbs. It was initially a bit of a stretch when he and his wife bought it right around when he became a judge. But and the rest is his retirement account. He's got a little bit of cash, and he's got a thrift savings plan, kind of the government's equivalent of a 401k. So he's been saving for retirement. He's been putting money in there. $2 million is not a lot for lawyer in his late 50s at the top of his career. It's going to be on the lower end of all of the justices when we get the full picture.